Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming today. My name is Sam Fairbairn. I'm the National Secretary of the People's Assembly Against Austerity, which is the organisation that is calling and organising the demonstration on Saturday the 20th of June. We've got a fantastic panel for you today, which I think is just a snapshot really of the broad support that the People's Assembly has gained for this demonstration in particular, and they're going to be speaking to you in a minute about why they're supporting the demonstration, why they're involved with this demonstration. The demonstration is in just 2 weeks' time, and like I said, the People's Assembly is the main organiser of it, but the People's Assembly is a coalition between various MPs, between trade unions, between celebrities, campaigns, and all sorts of different local groups up and down the country. We're linked to no one political party, but we're a national campaign fighting back, uniting around anti-austerity campaigns. And we've organised this demonstration in response to government austerity measures, which we feel like have gone on for far too long. We feel like the austerity has created nothing but suffering for the majority, while at the same time the richest in society have doubled their wealth since the recession hit. This government thinks that because they've got a small majority in Parliament, that they shouldn't. That's a mandate for them for dictatorial rule over the next 5 years without opposition. And the point of this demonstration is to kickstart an opposition to austerity and to what this government is planning on doing. And I want to emphasise that point, that this demonstration is just the start of a nationwide campaign that's going to be taking place over the next few weeks and months. We're assembling the demonstration in the heart of the City of London, outside the Bank of England, and we'll be marching the demonstration to Parliament Square. We're expecting hundreds of thousands of people to be attending that demonstration. Already over 70,000 people have pledged to be there online on our website, and hundreds of coaches have been organised from across the country. So without any further ado, I just want to introduce the panel. There's some slight changes to the initial lineup, but from left to right, I'd like to, firstly, on my far left, it's Amelia Womack, who is the Deputy Leader of the Green Party and representing the Green Party here today. Next to me on my left is Charlotte Church, the singer and activist. To my right, but not politically, is Steve Turner. He is the Assistant General Secretary of Unite the Union, and to my far right is Rachael Maskell, who is newly elected MP for York. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Steve to say a few words about why Unite the Union is supporting the demonstration. Steve.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Sam. And you will have noticed, of course, in the outset that I'm not Len McCluskey. I'm our Assistant General Secretary. Len's been tied up in some important industrial work that's kicking off in the union right now, so I won't be able to join us. But I'm very happy to, not just as our Assistant General Secretary, but also as the National Chair of the People's Assembly. And Unite is incredibly proud to have been associated with the People's Assembly since its formation. Less than 2 years ago, in fact, we formed the People's Assembly as an umbrella organisation of all the anti-cuts groups, all of our trade union movement, our political parties, our allies, faith groups, and indeed others, all of whom were uniting in common cause. And the common cause, of course, was to defeat ideological austerity. And that's the reason that we got involved from the outset. The vast majority of trade unions in our country are involved in the People's Assembly. As I said, we're incredibly proud not just to be involved directly, but to be mobilising our members as well for the 20th of June. It will be a fantastic demonstration. I think it will be the largest demonstration that we've seen on our streets for many, many years. And it is the broadest possible coalition against some of the most vicious and destructive attacks that I think we'll see on our communities and our wider economy, because we believe that austerity has failed economically and politically, as well as the citizens of our nations. It is a vindictive ideological government that's driving home now a very clearly ideological shrinking of the state. This is not about the economics of austerity. And even the IMF are now saying that austerity has not only failed during the recent past, but will fail if you continue along this neoliberal economic policy. So it is a drive to shrink the state, possibly back to the levels of state interference that we saw in the 1930s, if not the 1920s. And as a consequence of that, for ordinary working people, of course, we've seen a shrinking in living standards that we haven't seen since Queen Victoria was on the throne in the 1870s. And even the most positive predictions are that wages won't get back to the levels that they were at in 2008, even before the banking crisis and the crash caused by bankers and irresponsible capitalists and not ordinary working people and our families, of course. It won't get back until those levels before the 2020 election. So what have we seen? It hasn't taken them very long, has it? I mean, they might have a majority, but they have no mandate, while they attack the trade union movement and want to impose new thresholds on strike action and people protesting and mobilising against the attacks that they face. We have a government that itself was only elected on 24% of the electorate. Even of those that voted, of course, only 36% voted for a Conservative Party. So they have no mandate to deliver a continuing austerity drive. And yet we've already seen the £12 billion, and not yet identified where it's coming from, of course, but the £12 billion that will be taken from the welfare state. And we genuinely believe that that's going to be a continued attack, not just on the vulnerable and the sick and the disabled and those that are unable to work, of course, but it will be on in-work benefits as well. We will start to see the sanctioning of those people that through no fault of their own are forced into low-paid, short hours or 0 hours jobs, who will be sanctioned for not working hard enough to work harder. That's the reality of where this government is going to go. And that will be a tax on working tax credits, it will be a tax on in-work benefits and, of course, housing benefits. And instead of building the desperately needed million or so homes that we need, social homes that we need within our economy, we're pumping £24 billion a year into the pockets of the already wealthy landlords, of course, who exploit a rental market which is creating a serious problem for Generation Rent and others. So we're seeing attacks on ourselves, we're seeing attacks on the Human Rights Act, we're seeing attacks on the vulnerable, and of course we genuinely believe that austerity has failed economically as well. If you really want to deal with a deficit, you stop paying people welfare payments, you put people back to work. You do build those million homes that you need so desperately within our economy to find a home for the next generation. You do start to invest in the infrastructure of the economy, you put people back to work into decent jobs, well-paid jobs, secure jobs, unionised jobs. You get people off benefits and you get people starting to pay taxes. That's the way you address a deficit, and the debt itself is smaller than it was after the Second World War, and it's certainly not the highest that it's been in the last 40 years. So debt is not a bad thing. You pay that off over an extended period of time in order to invest in growth in our economy. And that's the way that we see the economy should move. That's the way that we should deal with this politically, of course, while attacking the tax evaders that take some £120 billion a year off to the nearest tax haven that they can find from bonuses and other exploitative methods of pay. So we need to attack that. We need to invest in our economy, invest in our people, and stop a failed political drive to shrink the state and introduce austerity.
Thanks, Steve. Now I just want to move straight on to Amelia Womack, Deputy Leader of the Green Party.
Thank you. The Green Party has really stood up against austerity, and we've been committed to campaigning against it. This election has more than ever proved why we need to come together on June the 20th against the austerity agenda. Talking to people on the doorstep, people who have already been, who needed a message of hope to come out of this election, a message of hope that an alternative was possible. The very people whose lives have been fundamentally impacted by the diminishing access to fundamental support. As an anti-austerity movement, we now have a duty to stand out and actually provide an alternative to the current government's message. This government whose main objective seems to be to undermine our rights through cuts, that each and every one of us has a duty to come out on June the 20th to stand against it. We must unite to give hope to austerity's victims and strengthen the voice against this government's immoral agenda. This is why I'm here, this is why the Green Party are here, to ensure that we rise up against this government's actions and show that the people of this nation will not tolerate these attacks on public services and the most vulnerable in our society. We have a government whose narrow view of what a long-term economic plan looks like will strip our nation of its national assets, assets that provide support to our communities, our families, and for so many people offer the basic safety nets that each and every one of us needs support with. Whether it's youth centres where young people can build their skills and talents outside of school, or whether it's the NHS where the basic founding principles of the NHS are being undermined in the name of profit, we must stand up against austerity on June the 20th to protect our communities and our services on which we all depend. The biggest lie that we're being sold is that these cuts are inevitable. Yet here we stand as the People's Assembly showing that there are big, radical solutions. I fundamentally believe that right now, radical solutions are in fact rational ones. And meeting so many people whose lives have already been impacted by austerity, I think it demonstrates that such solutions aren't just rational, they are essential. We've been seeing a system where the majority of people are being forced to pay for a crisis that they did not cause. The very richest in our society and big corporations enjoy tax loopholes, while the rest of us have experienced cuts, sanctions, and the dismantling of our public services. This isn't about party political politics. This is about coming together, gathering under the umbrella of the People's Assembly on June the 20th, and together voicing a strong message that we will not sit idly by while our schools, our NHS, and our vital public services are treated like a marketplace. We will not watch while our country is turned over to private interests, and we will not tolerate our services being sold to the highest bidder. This is our time as a generation to prove that things can be done differently, to drive solutions that benefit people and not just simply the market. We need to work together, shake up our political landscape for the better. The time for change is now. We need to go out on June the 20th, whoever you are and whatever political party you voted for or affiliated to. Thank you.
Thanks, Amelia. I'd now like to introduce Rachael Maskell, MP for York.
Some things are bigger than politics, and that is everybody's life, and that is what this whole movement which is being built right across the country is about. It's a movement which speaks up for where people are at, not where politics are at. It's a movement which is about bringing change to our country, ensuring that people do have a voice when the politicians deny them that voice, and therefore the 20th of June, that march for against austerity, is going to be so vital in ensuring the voiceless are heard across our country. We have seen a government elected just by 24% of the population, bringing in a divisive agenda, an agenda which will be dividing Britain, dividing us away from Europe and dividing our society. They want to take our NHS, and we can expect it to be thrown onto the marketplace over the next 5 years, where the vultures will come and take those services, making profit out of the sick. And there is nothing to stop that happen apart from the will of people. They're taking our housing, they're going to put our social housing on the market, and again nothing will stop it unless we stand up in our communities and make sure we save those houses for the people that really do need a roof over their head. 1,500 people in my constituency do not have a home, and their hope of having a home is disappearing as they know that the homes that they would have had are now going to be sold. They're taking our schools, trying to turn them into academies. They're actually going to be taking our children as well through tightening up the adoption laws, and then they've already taken the legal rights of parents to have that say over what happens over their children. They're going to be taking our employment rights through the regulation, the enterprise bill they're going to bring. Cutting red tape always sounds good to a Tory, but to those workers in those places, It means more health and safety risks. It means worse terms and conditions at work. And therefore, we need to stand up. They're going to be taking our welfare, £12 billion in the next couple of years, the harshest cuts we have ever witnessed. And the people who they are crushing are the people who can't survive at the moment. They're going to be taking immigration rights, taking civil liberties. We don't know what's happening around the Bill of Rights, but we know that with the Snoopers Charter, they're going to be taking our rights away to our privacy. They're going to be taking our public services. What they've said is they're going to not put any more resources in by raising taxes, which can only lead to an agenda of cuts. And they're going to be taking away trade union rights, the trade union voice. Well, we've got another message for this government. Oh no, you're not, because we are going to make sure our voice is heard. Because you can't take away our voice, you can't take away our bill, you can't take away our vision, and you can't take away our spirit. And that is what this country is about. We have a real soul in our country, and it is that spirit which will take us forward to fight back and ensure that we create a country of fairness in the future. We have a vision for the future. Where there is no vision, the people perish. That famous saying. But we have a vision of hope, a vision of redistribution in a better future. And therefore we have to take a stand against austerity, because we cannot allow our brothers and our sisters to be crushed at this time. But we need to ensure that we all rise up together and fight back. And the 20th of June gives us that vital opportunity to build that movement of change, and make sure that we see fairness put in the heart of our nation again.
Thanks, Rachel. Now I'd like to introduce, finally, Charlotte Church.
Hi, I feel like there isn't that much left to say after all of that, and everybody has spoken so beautifully. The reason I wanted to get involved, and I've already been on two People's Assembly marches, and I plan to go to the one on the 20th of June in London, is because I feel like the public has been misled, has been misinformed, and I feel like that's unfair and unacceptable. And it was the first rally really I've ever been on since I was like 9, and it was super fun for a start, and it was amazing just to be around lots of different types of people from all different walks of life who just have a common thread of having empathy, who care. And it was inspiring to be with those people and to hear these speakers, and educational, and I learned so much. So I think, for a lot of the time when we think about the welfare state, I think a lot of people just think about those people who are the most vulnerable in society, who are on benefits or whatnot. But the welfare state is everything, is our fire service, is our NHS, is our education, our travel network, everything that we have. So we will all be affected by these cuts, and I think that as soon as people realise the extent of it and how it really is going to impact pretty much all of us, then I think they're going to be a lot angrier and a lot more discontent than they are now. So I just urge everybody just to come down on the 20th of June. Just come and have a look, educate yourself. It'll be loads of fun. There'll be like face painting and music, and it'll be great. And just come and have a look and educate yourself.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Charlotte. Okay, now I've got a bit of time for any questions that anybody may have, which if you want to direct anything to any particular panel member, please just say yes.
Chris Hope from the Daily Telegraph. Can I ask two questions? One to Steve. Steve, have you asked any Labour leaders or leadership candidates to come? And if so, which ones are going to be on the march? And will there be speeches at the end? And this is Charlotte, may I ask you a question? You're simply a millionaire. Are you worth £11 million? That's what's been said in the past. And what's been your personal experience of government cuts? Your personal experience?
Okay, thank you. I might take a couple and then bring the panel back in if that's okay. Joanna?
Hi, Joanna Ramiro from the Morning Star. I want to ask Steve, maybe this is a cheeky question, but given that Jeremy Corbyn has just announced that he's putting his name in the hat for the Labour leadership, if Unite is planning on throwing in his support, given that he has supported the People's Assembly and that he is quite openly an anti-austerity candidate?
Okay, I'd ask people to keep questions relevant to the 20th of June demonstration if possible. Yes?
Laura Patel from The Times. I actually just wanted to follow up on that question about, there's been some suggestion that Unite doesn't really appreciate the rhetoric coming out of all the Labour leadership contenders at the moment. The language that they've been using is quite different to what you've been talking about. So is it possible that the union could say, we don't fancy any of you, frankly?
Okay, thanks for that. Steve, why don't you come back on those quick points before we get a whole series of questions on the Labour leadership?
Yeah.
Do you want to do that first?
Okay, I mean, anything's possible. We'll be conducting, along with other unions actually, an open hustings for all of those candidates that put their names forward to lead our party. I'm pleased that Jeremy Corbyn's put his name in the frame, to be honest with you. I think he'll open up a whole different debate internally within the leadership challenge right now, the election. So I'm quite happy about that. As a union, we've not made any decisions as to who we're going to support, or if indeed we're going to support any particular candidate. That decision will be taken by our members. We will have an open hustings. We will invite them all to attend, and I'm sure that they will all attend. And we'll make some decisions after that. In terms of whether or not they're coming on the 20th, they're all very welcome on the 20th. They're all aware that the 20th is taking place. And I think we'd all be a bit disappointed if we didn't see them there. So we are anticipating that they want to join us. We are anticipating that all those that are ideologically opposed to ideological austerity will join us on the 20th. And indeed, if they are, I'm sure they'll get a platform.
Do you think they all are? Sorry, just to follow up on that. Do you think they are?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
Okay, can I get a few more questions? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm totally happy to answer that question. First of all of the things about my wealth have always been overestimated. You can go and have a look. All the records there in Company's House. Feel free. And also, is it essential that I would have had to have suffered personal suffering or from the cuts or whatever to have empathy with anybody else? Is that like a prerequisite that must have happened? I don't think so.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yes?
Jeff Farrell from the Daily Star. It's well known that militant elements will want to attract themselves to your protest. Are you aware of any militant elements, and what are you doing to weed out any such elements?
Okay, thanks for that question. I'm going to take a couple more before we come back on that. Anything else? Okay. Well, I'll come straight back in on that one then. I mean, the People's Assembly organised a demonstration last year of over 50,000 people, which assembled at the BBC headquarters and marched to Parliament Square. There wasn't, that was, as people have said, that was a family-friendly, there was face painting, there was music, there was not a single bit of trouble on that demonstration, and we don't expect anything like that to happen on this one either. We are planning a peaceful demonstration, and we believe that this demonstration will be hundreds of thousands of people, from children to old age pensioners and everywhere in between, and representing every section of society. So we don't believe that anything like that will happen on the 20th of June. Joanna, go on.
Question. Given that last year it did have a massive rally and it was very positive and it was very family friendly, however, cuts continue to be put forward, certainly once that Tories are taking power. Are there plans for an escalation of action? If so, what? And given that Steve so far does not want to answer straight out who the Unite will support in terms of Labour leadership, what else can we put forward towards Parliament? I know obviously Amelia is here as well. What is planned as a general, maybe even coordinated action against cuts and against the Tory austerity agenda?
Okay, that's a good question. Thanks, Joanna. Does there's something that most of the panel could come back on. Amelia, do you want to start?
I think that, certainly Caroline Lucas, post-election, has spent a lot of time talking about what we need to be working on across different parties and austerity. Building the anti-austerity movement is one of those topics. And we will be looking to work with all kinds of different parties to actually make sure that this issue is heard and communicated. And as there are a number of kind of early day motions that are going through, that Caroline's always been putting forward these anti-austerity motions, and hopefully we can get further backing from people in the Labour Party to get those through, and applied in SNP as well.
Thanks. Rachel?
There's a strong team now of Labour MPs who are very much standing against austerity and fighting for an alternative agenda. There are the 10 of us, the new MPs that came in, that wrote out a letter which I think probably most of you have seen, very much standing on a new agenda, that we have to have an alternative to austerity moving forward. And therefore Labour has got a very strong voice now on the anti-austerity agenda, and we'll make sure that voice is heard, and we've already been really active in Parliament to make sure that it's very clear that austerity isn't working, and we're challenging the government at every step of the way. And already a week in, we've held them to account, and we will continue to do that because we believe there is a real alternative out there, and it's time that Parliament wakes up and actually listen to the real pain that people are experiencing.
Thanks. Steve?
Yeah, okay. Look, Joanna, it's not that I don't want to answer the question, mate. It's that our members will answer that question, not me. It's not for individuals within our union to make those sorts of decisions. But I just want to pick up on this question about last year's rally. Yeah, we are continuing to see austerity. And this is not just about Westminster politics. This is not just a campaign for Parliament Square on the 20th of June. This is a campaign that's launched in towns, in villages, in cities, everywhere across our nations, actually. This is about building a community resistance against some of the most vicious ideological attacks on our communities that we've seen in over 100 years. So this is about resisting evictions. This is about positive direct actions. This is about civil disobedience, peaceful civil disobedience. You know, the whole history of social progress and the defence of progress has been about struggle. And it is about people uniting. And it is about standing up and not just sitting back and taking or feeling debilitated by a government saying, yeah, you can protest for as many times as you like. You can have 100,000 on the streets. You can get 3 million on the streets to try and stop the war, but we're going to continue to go to war. And what they want to do is debilitate you. Well, we're not going to be debilitated. The attacks on the trade union movement are no accident. Why is it within the first week of coming to power with the smallest majority, of course, they start to once again attack the trade union movement? Because they might want to rubbish us as irrelevant, but they understand more than anybody. They understand the collective strength of organised labour. So we shouldn't be under any illusions about why it is that they come back again and again and again to try and debilitate and destabilise and undermine collective labour. The largest single voluntary organisation that we've got in our country. Over 6.5 million workers choose, not at the end of a bayonet, they choose to join a trade union. And that's their civil right. We're about defending civil liberties, human rights, and what's good about our society. What's good about Great Britain. And that is about standing up and defending what you believe in.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Hold on 1 second. I just want to come in on that point as well in terms of 2 extra dates. After the 20th of June, like I said, it's not the end of the campaign, it's just the beginning of a campaign. On the 8th of July, George Osborne is called an emergency budget, which is the second budget within 4 months, which obviously begs the question, what did he miss out of the last budget? So we are calling a national day of action on that day, where protests will take place up and down the country on the 8th of July, just a few weeks after the 20th of June demonstration. We'll be protesting in Parliament Square in the evening on that day. But then also at the Tory party conference in Manchester in October, there will be a massive demonstration, a nationwide demonstration outside their conference. We'll be getting people from across the country to go to that. So that's that. Yes?
Ask the panel what personal tax rate you'd be willing to bear to pay off your debt. Everyone understands that austerity is a bad thing. We get that, right? No one likes it, but it has to happen if you debt so much. What would you be willing, like 6%, 7%?
Okay.
And also, on Steve, on the civil disobedience, what other examples do you have of that? Please, sit-ins on major roads or anything?
Okay, thanks for that. Is there any other questions? Yeah.
Actually, some small question about the leadership, which is that one of the big unknowns about the Labour leadership contest, Steve Turner, is that we don't know how many people are going to be voting. Can you give us an update on the affiliates process to sign up trade union affiliates as members?
Okay, I might take 1 or 2 more and then I think we'll close it. Yeah.
Yeah, you say that this government hasn't got a mandate because they only got 37% of the popular vote and 24% from the public. UKIP got 13% of the vote and nearly 4 million votes in the end. They've only got 1 MP to show for that. So do you agree that UKIP deserves a much bigger voice in Parliament and lots more MPs? Would you like to see that?
Okay, thanks for that question. Any others? 1 more and then I'll bring the panel back. No? Okay, I'm going to bring the panel back now for closing remarks and to answer those last round of questions. I'm going to go from right to left, if that's okay. Rachel?
On the issue of taxation, I think we need a far more redistributed system out there. The reality is, you know, if you've got £1 million, you can spare a lot more money to invest in our good public services. So I do think we need to ensure that we see a proper increase in wages for people. We've got too many people in 0-hour contracts, minimum wage. and therefore struggling around the bottom, and so many people that even avoid their taxes. And obviously what we would say is we've got to really tackle that tax avoidance, tax evasion, and bring that money back into invest in our country. But those people that can pay more should pay more.
What top rate would you take?
Hold on.
Yeah, well, I would be happy to pay, you know, if we're going to get perfect services, absolutely, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I would go high if, you know, if...
Can you stop interrupting? Can you let her answer the
What I
question,
would
please?
say is look at some of the best public service countries where they have public services, like in Scandinavia, and therefore, you know, they pay a much higher level of tax, and there is a much higher level of satisfaction. If you look at inequality across our society, that's what pulls a society apart, and therefore, you know, we do have to tax at the higher tax bands, but obviously lower for the people at the bottom. So certainly would encourage there to be higher taxes at the top, definitely. On the issue you were talking about, kind of around our politics, why did people vote UKIP at the last election? It's because they felt that some of the other parties weren't speaking into their needs, and therefore what I believe Labour should be speaking on that agenda, talking to people about good quality jobs, having a home, taking away the politics of fear, which I think UKIP really do extol, and therefore what we need to ensure is that we've got good, strong left-wing politics moving forward.
Thank you, Rachel. Steve?
Yeah, well, I agree actually on the taxation question. I'm not going to get into a bidding auction on it, but I agree with everything that Rachel just said there. I do reject though this concept that debt's a bad thing. I don't agree that debt's a bad thing. I mean, yeah, it depends what you spend your money on. to borrow money, personal debt's a very bad thing, and we've seen the highest levels of personal debt right now. It's what's growing the economy, if the economy's growing at all, is on the back of increasing personal debt. And most people now find themselves no more than a month or two wage checks away from being in real serious debt, and having to deal with that through citizen advice and perhaps even take out loans in order to address it. But debt itself is not a bad thing. If you're investing the money that you borrow, it's the deficit that's a bad thing. If you're spending more money each year than you're getting in, then that is a problem. So you have to address that, but how do you address it? You don't cut the money that you're spending, you invest. You invest and you take people out of the welfare state reliant upon benefits into decent jobs. You build the infrastructure and the social housing that we need in order to home the next generation of kids. I've got 3 kids myself, and I'm not going to take out a second mortgage to put a shed in my garden so they've got somewhere to live. But that's the reality of where we are at the moment, and that picks up on the fear that people have got about public services. Where are their kids going to get a decent job, not some traineeship somewhere that's now called an apprenticeship, so that they can pay even lower than the lowest level of the minimum wage to the youngest people in society. This is about having hope and opportunity for our people. So that is about inspiring people and addressing the politics of fear and all these questions that in reality, when you talk to people that voted UKIP or were thinking of voting UKIP, brought to the fore. They couldn't get their kids into a local school. This is a failure of politics. It's a failure of Westminster, not the fault of your neighbour. And we need to address that. And we need to address that with real radical political solutions to this. But debt itself is not a bad thing. It's how you spend the money. It's about investing in our people, in our economy, in our infrastructure, and getting people back to work. That's how you get people paying taxes and drive down the deficit and pay off some of the debt. We are working hard to get our members affiliated, of course, into Labour, being Labour supporters. And that's fine, and we're on the case, as are other unions on the case, and we'll do what we can within the time limits that we've got to make sure that that's as big a success as it can be. We're not going to get into, I don't know how many we've got at the moment, to be fair, it's not my area of work. But we are working very hard to do that, as are all other unions, as is our right within the party, of course. This is about individual members making their voice heard within their party. And they'll make a choice about whether they want to do that or not. And whether they do is more a question for Labour than for us, to be fair. Are Labour inspiring our members? And if they're inspiring our members will get involved in their party. If not, they won't. On the question of where UKIP are and 80 seats and the rest of it, I mean, PR is a big question, and it's a question that we're going to have to challenge. It's challenging us, and we're going to have to answer over the course of the coming period. There are downsides with it, of course. There are fears around PR and what that will mean for people. But I'm personally a big supporter of PR. It depends on the model of PR, actually. Lots of groups within society are completely underrepresented within Westminster politics, and the bubble there doesn't talk to our people. And that's a big fear, and that's why this whole strategy around the People's Assembly is not around demonstrations outside Westminster. It's about community politics. It's about re-engaging with ordinary people from all walks of life that are not just bearing the brunt of austerity, but want to build a fairer, better society within which we can all live.
Thanks, Steve. Now over to Charlotte.
Yeah, I paid all my tax since I was 12 years old, and I would be totally happy if it was raised to 60 or 70. I wouldn't move away, I wouldn't have an offshore account. That would be totally fine. For a better infrastructure and public services are more of a Scandinavian model, which I see as far more progressive than we currently are, I'd be absolutely fine with that.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Do you expect to sing band your music in the demonstration?
No, not necessarily. Not unless I'm asked, but no. I just want to go and speak.
To be announced. Amelia?
I agree with so many of the points that have been made, this idea that tax is some kind of punishment or something where it's actually how we invest into the very society that we want to be a part of. And we have to ask ourselves that question, what society do we want to be a part of? And for most people it's a society where we have a fully funded NHS, where waiting times are reduced, that we have a fire service that works well, that we have schools that actually invest in people learning and not just become academies to force people into very specific kind of business-related jobs. And what we have seen across Europe, that better, higher taxes lead to a better society. We look enviously over to Scandinavia, enviously over to Germany, look at their kind of free education, look at the kind of society that they're building, yet it's a higher tax rate, making sure that we do close tax loopholes that will enable us to build towards that kind of nation. And in terms of UKIP and electoral reform, that I think that we need to be standing. We can't be using an out-of-date system to provide to defend ourselves against UKIP. We need to be being strong at the kind of messaging that we want to put out there. That messaging can't be following the tune that immigrants are coming in taking our jobs. It needs to be standing up and saying that what we need is to be making sure that people are paid a living wage, that we have better housing, that we're not losing our housing to the housing market but building more social housing. That and actually acknowledging the investment, the impact that positive impact that migrants have into our nation. It shouldn't be, as I said, it should not be an out-of-date electoral system that does that. It needs to be politics, the political parties, and a general progressive movement.
Okay, well, thanks very much for that, Amelia, and thanks everyone for coming today. The panel may be around, if you ask them nicely, for a couple of questions afterwards if you wish. But please speak to Ramona if you want to do longer interviews, who's down here at the front. And please can I just remind everybody that the 20th of June does look like it's going to be the biggest demonstration in this country for years. And it will just be the kickstart of a big campaign going forwards against what this government's planning. So thanks for coming today, and we look forward to seeing you on the 20th. If you want to apply for press passes there, please do also email Ramona down at the front here. Thanks.